Welcome, everybody. This is Ryan Staley, and I am back with Mike Haylon for part two. Mike is the GM of AI Studio over at Asana, was a lifer, I guess I could say that, in enterprise sales leadership, and now is leading up AI Studio for Asana. Mike dropped some amazing insights on how they used AI transformation internally. So if you missed episode one, go back and check it out. But now what we're going to get into more specifically is not the internal component of what Asana is doing, but more the external component, right? What AI Studio is and how it's serving other people. Mike, welcome. Happy to have you back on the show.
Thanks, Ryan. Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm pumped. I want to get into this. I'm curious. Like, I love checking out an awesome AI tool, AI agent, workflow, whatnot. Super intrigued with what you're doing over there and love the thought leadership coming out of Asana. So walk us through exactly what AI Studio is and like how it could be applied for go-to-market.
Yeah, probably best if I take you through a couple slides.
Yeah, man. Show some visuals. People love visuals, especially my YouTubers.
We can do this together. So AI Studio is a no-code workflow builder. If you're experienced with Asana, you'll appreciate how intuitive the application is. That extends to this product as well. If you've used our rules engine before to create automations with if-then statements that can help perform actions that you would otherwise have to intervene and do on your own, you'll be very familiar with AI Studios. We've now just embedded AI to perform lots of these functions right within that workflow builder. Any workflow really has these four main processes. It's intake, planning, execution, and reporting. And so you could imagine for an event that you're running, Ryan, or the work that you go do and doing discovery with your clients and having to intake inputs from surveys that you're launching, and you can really, the manual process you would have had to go through to go back and forth and make sure you collected all the information. There was a QA check that all the fields got filled out, that you had to follow up and ask specific questions about things that didn't get filled out or didn't have the context you required. You can automate this all now and remove yourself from it until the point in which you would need to intervene, which now, instead of in all those steps, might be at the point of planning out the work off the back of all that information that you collect. Have prompts embedded within this workflow that could produce the output that you're ultimately sharing back with customers about what you've learned without all the copying and pasting from between different systems and intervention that you would have had to take prior to communicate or email back and forth to collect this information. And so if any workflow that you built, how this extends to go to market, it applies really in the same way. We have a large company running their events, large scale event out of this workflow engine now, where they had to deal with hordes of vendors and people and speakers, and now they've been able to automate a lot of this process up front to collect the information they need to communicate back out to customers whatever they need from them, and then to put their team in a more strategic position to actually focus on the execution of the event as a result. And so, really these are steps along the way that we were just speaking to that any one person would have to perform. And now you can see, really where AI can start to take shape, renaming requests automatically, doing a quality check of the information that's actually in there, communicating back with the requester submitter with custom questions based on what hasn't been filled out, checking for duplicates. And as you get into planning phases, maybe reading documents that you've embedded in there to only pull out what you need from it to input into the account plan that you're using, to recommend due dates based on good examples that you've shared within the prompt and the workflow that you've built, and really start to take this all the way through to really more effective reporting on it, because you've eliminated a lot of the duplicates without all the manual effort that required. You've renamed inputs for a more consistent structure that you require, so your data is a lot richer and cleaner, and you're analyzing documentation that doesn't require people to have to sift through all of that, but instead really just double check the work of the AI that you've embedded with it to say, hey, actually, I approve this. This looks good. This did yield, what I expected it to. And that will take you all the way through to, a smart workflow. And so, I think Asana's collaborative work management platform lends itself really nicely to this, because you can think of it as a directions post Google Maps and pre, with Our work graph, that you see here, it gives the AI the context and structure it needs to go to be pointed to a specific place where it can go pull that information, as opposed to, I think, these agents that get deployed into a large database and get asked to perform a function where there might be different versions of that document, or old versions of that document, or even the lack of context or structure to point to a particular part of that large database.
Mm-hmm.
That's where hallucinations occur, and it becomes much more difficult to perform these. And the workflow builder really can take you through this in a much more seamless way. And so these are starting to get into screenshots of exactly how you'd go step by step, where you can initiate a rule. When this form comes in, move it to this section. As that form gets read, QA check it. If it doesn't have enough information, put it into this section. If it does, show it as complete, and continue to take it all the way through to workflow. And then the prompts that you're writing are how you're going to instruct AI to perform functions within that. So you might have a document it needs to read. This is what a great blog post looks like, so that it has good examples and good context of what it needs to produce. And all of that can be automated within this step-by-step, instructions that you've helped give it to navigate, as opposed to, I think a lot of where the discussion goes today is just take an agent, let it run wild. It'll do all the work for you. We are far from, that reality. And I think context, human in the loop, and a little bit more structure, we found lends it really nicely to taking advantage of AI in the world where we sit.
Excellent, man. So what models do you support as well? I see the model builder in there.
Yeah. So we are very intentional about the models we select. So we partner, of course, with OpenAI and Anthropic. Our CEO is on the board of Anthropic. We have 2 high reasoning models, one from each, and then 2 really low cost models that help you perform, let's say, high volume, lower reasoning tasks that are less expensive, and then a couple that sit right in between that.
Okay.
I think as we go forward, we'll continue to look at supporting more and more models, but those are the 2 that we support today.
Okay, so this is good, man. I love this. I know we're short on time, because I've kept you a little bit longer with some of the stuff that you're doing and focusing on. What are you seeing as like let me ask you this. Is there any like running while you're asleep? Like, this is a good analysis where you wake up in the morning and a ton of different task analysis optimizations have happened, and it's done by the time you wake up, or it's happening in the background. Any great use cases like that you can point to, and what you're seeing from that as well?
Yeah, when I stepped into this role, we had, let's just say, many, many dozens. I won't give an exact number, but of opportunities and I had 2 people on a team, and I report directly to our global CRO. And in late February, he was asking me about individual opportunities, and my answer was, I've got a waterfall here to report my forecast, but having details about each and every one of these is difficult at this stage. And he said, you have 7 days. And
Nice.
in those 7 days, we used AI Studio. We built a workflow that integrated in with Salesforce and amalgamated all this data from call transcripts, from email back and forth, from notes and account plans between Asana and Salesforce, and put it into a simple interface and dashboard within Asana, where I wrote a prompt to say, here's what a good deal looks like that's likely to close. Here's what a not so good deal looks like, and give me your interpretation of whether this is going to close this quarter or not, and then give me a justification for why. And now I've got in 7 days, with the help of a builder, a creator here who's really adept at integrations and building workflows, because there still is a little bit of a learning curve today. We were able to build this really powerful workflow engine that created an interface for me that gave me an in-out call on every deal. It gave me the justification for each of those. And all of a sudden, within 7 days, I sounded really, really intelligent. I think the alternative to that would have been having to go out to each of these individual teams, bothering them about where things sit, going and searching that information myself, in the many, many hours of the time that would have required prior. And I was able to more confidently call a forecast as a result in only a week's time, and then do so with really great detail about why these deals were trending in the right direction or not. That would have been impossible prior.
Well, and how many deals was it that you had to do this with?
Many, many dozens, I'll say. It's we've had a huge demand for this, more than any one person would want to have to spend time learning about in a week's time. Put it that way.
Excellent, man. Well, I got one last question for you before we wrap. What do you see as the future of where this is going, specifically as it relates to agents? Because there's, I think, real agents that are out, and then there's branding agents where people talk about agents that aren't really agents. So where do you see the future of AI over the next 12 months, and specifically as it relates to go to market, or just business as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, there's some bias here, but I think if you go out and talk with as many CIOs as I've been fortunate to, this is rooted in reality too. And that is that the cost of value for agents today is really just not there. The reason for that is what we talked about a little earlier, which is agents really require still direction, good instruction, context. And that's what really great prompts help to do. If you've ever tried to just pose a simple question without that in a ChatGPT or a Claude, you see what you get back versus if you give it context and a task to perform, goals, and then examples of what good or bad looks like. And I think that's what our platform really lends itself really nicely to. It has the structure of the work graph, so we can point you to specific tasks or projects as opposed to the entire system. It has the context that it can give you from within that workflow. So the task description or documents that are attached or commentary that's happened back and forth. And where agents can't perform that function, you could put humans into the loop. I think this is, I was just at a panel last week talking about this at a marketing conference, and there was talk about these SDR bots and, enterprise search. And the unfortunate reality is today, and this is why CIOs are saying the cost of value isn't there, is when you deploy an agent out into the wild without those step-by-step instructions, lots of hallucinations occur. And you then, as you and I talked about in part one of the episode, this is where people start to get deterred about the value that AI is going to deliver them. And then they are even less inclined to go through the transformation that we want them to go through. So I think while there's a lot of talk about agents, I think what customers are looking for really today are practical ways to get value out of AI today. And that's why we've had so much excitement and demand around our workflow builder, because those things that are still integral to get value out of AI are there. And, you don't have to spend a lot of time or energy to go find it. It can walk you through and guide you much like it would the agent along the way.
Great feedback, Mike. And I think I totally agree with you that's you got to give it direction, context, prompting. Those are the three core elements for a good outcome. So unfortunately, we're up on time. Again, where can people find you? Where can they find more about AI Studio at Asana?
Yeah, Asana.com. We've got all the resources, right there for you to learn everything you'd want to know about Asana and AI Studio specifically. And then you can find me on LinkedIn. There's two of us. I am a junior. So Mike Haylon, Haylon, a GM of AI Studio at Asana. It's been great, Ryan. Thank you for having me here. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks for being on, man. And appreciate you joining us as well. And we will see you all on the next episode.
All right.